My name is Jason, a man who parks in gym. This is the Gym Monster 2, and these are my initial impressions. But quick disclaimer right up front, although I don't currently have an affiliation with Speediance, I did receive the Gym Monster 2 in exchange for content, sharing my thoughts, opinions, my expertise, and my experiences with the Gym Monster with you guys. Now, if you like what you hear, be sure to subscribe and also check out my podcast. It's sponsored by Garage Gym Radio. It's called Rep, Rant, Repeat, and it's on YouTube or anywhere else that you might listen to a podcast. Okay, enough of the disclaimers and self-promos. Let's talk about my initial impressions of the Speediance Gym Monster 2. But first, what is the Gym Monster 2? Well, the Gym Monster 2 is a high-end smart home gym machine that combines strength training, cable functions, several forms of cardio, even yoga, and digital AI-driven features, okay? It uses magnetic resistance rather than analog or traditional weight plates, so it makes for a much smaller footprint. It's a quieter experience, and in several ways, an even easier way to train. So some people might even be inclined to call this thing an all-in-one machine, although I would argue that it is more like a lot-in-one. But first impressions, they should probably start with the box, and I've got to say, packaging on this thing was solid. It was adequate without being ridiculous. High quality materials, you know, it was like heavy corrugated cardboard. It's all strapped to a pallet, comes in a huge box, and they use that heavy black foam that's all like laser cut out for each piece and everything. And none of that white styrofoam junk that like gets on everything and it just makes a bigger mess than it's worth. So all that to say, everything showed up in great shape. But one of the coolest things is that it arrives basically fully assembled. Now, the only part that I had to put together was the rower attachment, and even that was super simple. Everything is clearly labeled, it's easy to identify, and setup on that was a breeze, okay? And even from there, it couldn't have been any easier to get started. You just plug it in, turn it on, connect it to your Wi-Fi, and within a minute, I think maybe a minute or less, I had my profile set up. Honestly, it felt like less time than downloading a new app on my phone, which Speediance also offers an app that integrates seamlessly with the Gym Monster, which is pretty cool. Also cool that it's not required to use. You can do everything on it without the app. And the user interface on the machine itself is pretty intuitive. I've run into a couple of, I don't want to call them quirks. I don't read the instructions. I just plug it in and I start going and I try to figure out whether or not it's dummy proof, right? So while I was exploring some of the like 500 included workouts, there were a couple of things that once I discovered it, it was there and I never had to look again. But in the meantime, I was like, I wish that would have been called out a little bit differently or something like that. But I'm gonna save that information for when I do a deeper dive review later on. Now, if you know me, you know that I was highly skeptical of electronic resistance. Always intrigued, but definitely skeptical, and probably for the same reasons that a lot of you are. The cost, there's the question of longevity, reliability, is it gimmicky? Is this just like social media hype? Am I being sold by some influencer or something like that, right? And that is exactly what I plan to find out as I put this thing through its paces over the next few months. So again, purpose of this video is to discuss some of my initial impressions, and I'll be doing a more thorough review once the honeymoon is over, or when I've had some more time to kind of see what this thing looks like when I'm not wearing delivery day dopamine goggles, because that is a thing. Let's talk a little bit about why I wanted one of these. I first tried the Gym Monster 2 at Home Gym Con, and I was genuinely impressed. Okay, the features, the functionality, and just the way that the rep walked me through the demo, it took away a lot of the uncertainty I had about the technology itself and whether or not I could figure it out or anything like that. It all just stuck with me. I don't know. I actually couldn't stop thinking about it afterwards. I thought about how cool I thought it was with the little bit of that I used it, how much I thought somebody like my wife would actually be able to benefit from this. So when I had the chance to bring one into my own space, I jumped at it. And for the past couple of weeks, I've been using it exclusively and extensively. I know, I feel like I've abandoned my beloved home gym, and although this is temporary, I've done so not just to prep for the review, but because honestly, it's been really fun, and the convenience of having it inside my house is hard to beat. Now, the dynamic weight settings where you can choose between standard, chain, or eccentric focused resistance has been adding a whole different level of satisfaction to my workouts. I mean, I know like that's part of the allure that everyone talks about with digital resistance in general, but to experience it for myself, I don't know, man. It's just a really fun way to add a new challenge after all the years of traditional or analog resistance training. Now, one thing I will say, I was really surprised at how much I appreciate this little finger knob wheel ring thing. I don't know if that's what they're calling it or not. They probably have a name for it. It's probably not little finger knob wheel ring thing, but anyway, I thought it would be annoying. I assumed it would be a piece of shit, which is probably also not what they're calling this thing. But I thought maybe I would have to go through like a process, right? Where it's going to connect or disconnect over and over again, or instability there or something like that. But it hasn't been the case at all. Now, remember, I don't read instructions. So once I figured out which direction the knob twists to increase or decrease the weight and the tempo that's required in order for the button press to acknowledge the weight off and on, it really has proven to be a really nice convenience, especially when your hands are full and you just want to do the next set or make on-the-fly adjustments. The only issues that I've run into with it so far are when I'm bench pressing. And it's like, when the reps get too heavy or my focus and energy shifts from not getting pinned under 135 pounds of electronic resistance, because it feels heavier than analog resistance, I promise. I don't want to get pinned under it and then trying to reach the button with my thumb or something like that while my hand's wrapped around the bar. I'm sure it's a me thing. It's probably not something that anyone else complains about, but I'm certain I'm doing it wrong, and I will probably have it figured out by the time I do a more thorough review. But it just seemed fitting to discuss it in my initial review since, well, it's part of my initial impression. And in fact, it might even be what this little clip thing is for. I think maybe you're supposed to clip this on here, clip this on the bar. I don't know if you can even see that. Clip this, and then maybe this on the bar, and then that gives you access. I don't know. I'll figure it out by the time I do the full review. But since I'm on the topic of accessories, let's just quickly go through each one of the accessories that came with my Gym Monster 2. Now, before I get into it, another disclaimer. I'm a nerd, okay? Like for real home gym nerd. I have a podcast about home gyms where I speak to an audience of literally no one, okay? So I am a nerd and I'm a little bit bougie. I'm also very particular when it comes to certain pieces of gym equipment and attachments. I have a high bar. I know, it's a curse, but I really don't think anyone is buying the Gym Monster 2 solely for the accessories. I do agree though, it's nice that it comes with enough attachments so that you can get a formidable workout straight out of the box without having to buy anything extra, especially since Speediance is using this proprietary square attachment point rather than your traditional carabiner. Now, I'm not really sure I understand that decision, but I was happy to see that they do include a few extra connection rings and a pair of connection rings with carabiners, these things, that are going to enable you to use any non-Speediance attachment of your choice. Which is a great segue into the D handles. Because of all the attachments that come with the Gym Monster 2, these D handles might be the absolute worst. Now, that's just my opinion, and remember, I'm hypercritical and impossible to please, at least that's what my wife says. In her opinion, these handles are fine. They do what they're designed to do. She and I are on opposite ends of the home gym nerd spectrum, so you may be able to relate somewhere in between. Okay, so what I like about the handles is that they do spin freely around the nylon webbing like this. That is nice. Now, I also like that they're not foam or some other material that just feels really gross over time. And that might be about it. Oh, you know what? They're lightweight. Lightweight is nice. I do like that. Personally, I think of the handle or the bar to be like a tactile attachment point between you and the weight. I just find that that's where you're like maybe it's because I'm used to analog for so long. Maybe the kids love plastic. I don't know. But to me, I just find that the smooth plastic grip kind of cheapens the experience. Now, I also find that although this nylon webbing is designed to glide through the handle, and it does, it just doesn't do it quite as smoothly as I would like. Now, my only other beef with the handles is that they don't have an integrated swivel, right? Of course, the cable itself serves the same purpose, but it's not the same, I swear. Now, again, maybe I'm being hypercritical, but I just like what I like. Now, they do offer an upgraded, I think they call it a smart handle or something like that, but it's going to allow you to turn the resistance off and on with like a button press on the end. It also has a metal handle instead of the plastic, but it's rubberized. So it's going to give you a little bit of a grip, rubberized grip instead of like a knurled steel or something like that. Now, I don't know. I might grab some of those in the future. I think they're 200 bucks. So I'm going to hold out and see how much I love the machine after, like I said, delivery day, dopamine, swimming around, all that stuff. So I would love to see them include the Track Handle Sport from Track Fitness, but I don't see that happening. Moving on to something a little more exciting are these forearm guards. I'm not 100% sure that's what they're calling them. They probably wrote it in the instructions, which I didn't read, but that's what I'm going to call them because that's exactly what they do. They attach to the machine between the handles and the cable attachment point. They're going to serve as like a cable extension. So you can do things like cable flies or bench press facing away from the machine or away from the attachment point. But what's really cool about them is that they protect your forearm from the cable itself, like this, right? Now, ideally, the cable would never make contact with your forearm during any exercise, but because of basic physics, that's just something that we have to accept. Now, with these in place, it provides like a nice and thick protective barrier, and it actually feels really nice. I don't know, they're like lifting gloves for your forearms, and I don't even care. This is something that I will absolutely use with my cable machine when I go back to doing grunt workouts with iron weights. Okay, my Gym Monster 2 came with a tricep rope. It's pretty nice. It's pretty standard stuff, although I do wish that they had integrated a swivel into the attachment here. I'm sure that's just a small detail. I'm probably being extra there. I just figure it would help alleviate any like awkward pulling or undue resistance if you're standing to the side of the machine or something like that. Otherwise, I do like that the rope runs freely through the steel attachment ring. I think this is going to allow you to use it as like a single rope like this without any kind of weirdness from a dangly ball or anything like that. And ankle cuffs. Now, I'm not a big ankle cuffs guy, and of those that I have used, I've never quite found any that I've just thought were particularly amazing, like above all others or anything like that. So pretty much standard issue ankle cuffs here, and I'm spitballing, but maybe they would benefit from a swivel also. I don't know. These are how Speediance has you do a lot of your lower body work. So if there is a holy grail of ankle cuffs in the world, drop me a comment, let me know where I should be looking for ankle cuffs. Otherwise, I'm just going to assume they're all the same, and we're going to talk about the barbell real quick. Okay, the barbell is a 28.5 millimeter diameter hollow stainless steel. It is actually pretty nice. Now, keep in mind, my wife calls this thing the silver bar, so for her, it's whatever. And for those who know the difference between like a cap barbell or the Rogue Ohio bar without having to Google it, I think you'll appreciate their attempt to find a bar diameter and a knurl that is tactile enough for those of us who wear our calluses with pride, while also satisfying those who might be more likely to wear fingerless gloves to protect their hands from looking like, well, ours. You know what I mean? Like, it's not aggressive at all, but it's there and it doesn't feel cheap. Like, you know, what you would find on a lot of imported like chrome barbells or attachments or those hex dumbbells, rubber hex dumbbells or something like that, for example. But I can't ignore the little barbell hooks. Okay, they work exactly as they're designed to work, but they look and kind of feel like plant hangers, and I can't do an initial impression video without sharing that as my initial impression. Now, aside from aesthetics and the way that these hooks serve to remind me that I'm not setting any world records with this setup, I do have one rant that I think may be valid. If you can see that, yeah. So they slip in here, but they don't clip securely into the attachment points of the machine. Now, I did scour the internet to see if this is a common complaint. It wasn't. So maybe I just need to shut up and lift. But my concern is that I'll knock one out on the re-rack and find myself awkwardly trying to solve for X while my hands are full. I guess I could just set the bar down and figure it out. Okay, I'm probably just being extra again. I'll let you know if that ever happens to me or if I find anything on the internet that says that that's a thing. But in the meantime, we'll just agree that the only real complaints I have about the hooks are that they're not going to feed my fragile ego like an overbuilt set of J-cups from Rogue or whatever. Okay, the bench, the adjustable bench. Man, I don't know about this bench. I mean, I am certain that it will hold up just fine. I have no concerns about the safety of it or anything like that, especially if you're just using it with the Gym Monster 2. But keep in mind, again, I am a bench snob. So of course, I have a lot to say about the bench. I will say that none of the things that I turned my nose up initially were concerns to my wife at all. And again, I've been using the bench with the Gym Monster 2 for the last few weeks, and I can admit that most of my initial complaints have turned out to be pretty superficial. So I'll save it for the more in-depth review after I've had some more time with the adjustable bench. And lastly, and this will also depend on which version you buy, but mine came with a rower and a row handle. I'm gonna do more of a deep dive on the rower itself in a subsequent review, but for the purpose of initial impressions, let's just say that it's well made. It's easy to assemble. The seat is more comfortable than a C2, although that isn't saying anything at all because the seat on the C2 is absolute shit. I like that you can stand it upright, but I would strongly suggest some sort of a wall anchor if you're going to do that. Not only because they have a sticker disclaimer with a big X on it telling you not to stand it upright, but also because it does have a risk of tipping, especially if kids or dogs or something like that. Now, the row handle is also very nice. It has a rubberized grip. I'm thinking it might be the same as what's on the Smart grips, but I don't have those Smart handles. But if it feels like this, it feels really good, okay? It's very subtle, like knurl-like texture. Otherwise, there's probably not much else to say about a straight bar, I suppose. Okay, now I've also joined the Speediance Facebook group to get a broader perspective, and it's been helpful in seeing what other users are saying, what tips, hacks, and tricks they've discovered. It gives me a better picture of how this thing performs across a larger sample size. Now, keep in mind, it's a Facebook group, so people, am I right? But in all seriousness, so far it's been a fair mix of people who are celebrating their achievements. I've seen people who love their Speediance equipment, people who are asking for assistance with some issues that they've encountered, and people who are there to help and assist however they can at all hours of the night. Now, I've also seen people go in and complain about things, but I do think that the big takeaway so far is that it doesn't really appear like it's like a fishbowl where Speediance is just generating fake positive feedback or screening the post to pick and choose what's posted or deleting negative comments or anything like that. Or if they are, they're not deleting some of the negative comments that I might have deleted. And I do appreciate that transparency. So I can't say that for every gym community group that I'm a member of. Now, if you're considering purchasing a big ticket item from Speediance, you should join their community and see if you like the vibe, maybe ask around, right? But closing thoughts for now, and to wrap up this first impressions review, I do want to reiterate, I don't have an affiliation with Speediance right now. Maybe that'll change in the future, I don't know, but for now, I'm just testing it out and I'm sharing my experience. So if you do decide to pick one up, just make sure that you use somebody's affiliate link or code. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It does help the community of people who dedicate their time testing and reviewing products so that you can make more informed decisions. Affiliate links and codes and things like that, especially for the Speediance, they're everywhere, okay? But to save you some scrolling, I am gonna drop my buddy Design Build Lift's link in the description below. He's also reviewing the Gym Monster 2 among some other things, so definitely check that out if you haven't already. And then I'll also put, not an affiliate code, but it's like a, what do they call that? Referral code in there that I think will save you a little bit of money. And I'll put that in there. I don't know if it's like a single time use or multi-use. I don't know. You get it when you download the app. So stick around for the full in-depth review coming soon. I will cover the quirks, the training experience from my perspective, from my wife's perspective, and whether or not electronic resistance is really worth the hype.